This portion of the program will deal with separating the subject from the background, either with tonal differences or with lighting. Speaking of separation, for portraiture we should always put light against dark when we want attention to that area, especially with black and white images. For this guy, I carefully put darks against lights to make sure we'd see him against that busy crane, especially when he's this far away. I made sure that his dark clothes contrasted against the light water, and his light head against the dark tree horizon. We always need to be thinking about keeping tonal separation in case we decide to change the image to black and white. We can't always rely on color to keep the subject separated from the background. A viewer's eye can't help but be drawn to the point of highest contrast, which in this case is her darker face against the brighter white pants. The maker of this image graciously allowed me to use this in the program, and I thought it was an excellent example of the difficulty of being able to see the separation problem sometimes in real life, because our eyes see in 3 dimensions, meaning that we can see, what's close to us and what's far away, but a camera can't. It's only a 2-dimensional device. So here we have lights against lights and dark against dark, and so it's hard to see the bride's dress and her outfit to separate her from the background. I goofed on this one. I placed the horizon line right through her face, and even though it's out of focus, it's still a problem because we have lights and darks competing. Then I came to my senses and I changed my camera angle for a cleaner separation. And one more example of how even a close-up image benefits from using contrast to your advantage. Her dark hair is blending into the dark tree behind her. By moving the camera, we place her dark hair against a lighter area. To properly record the sunset, I had to allow the terrain in the background to be underexposed. But that caused a problem seeing her legs. So I relied on the dynamic range of the camera to be able to lighten that area in the RAW software. Or we could just get lower to see the bright sky between her dark legs. I like this photo, but I'm not happy with the darkness under the horse's belly. I want more separation there. So then I laid on my belly and moved to a place where the trees were lower, and that gave me the separation that I wanted. And this is what I had to do to get it. I was crawling all over that manure pile behind me, but hey, you got to do what you got to do. Now, silhouettes are especially dependent on separation to draw the viewer's attention to what we want them to see. And again, that dark area by the horse's belly is a problem. For that one, cropping the image was my solution. Putting dark against dark is a good way to hide something we don't want to draw attention to, like someone's weight. But this girl is not heavy. If they have a good figure, we certainly want to show that. And by the way, with the silhouette, we certainly don't want her to look like she's got a beard. So make sure that your silhouettes are clean. So this image follows that principle of setting opposite tones next to each other to force the viewer to see the subject first. We always want to make the message very clear. I goofed here by placing the bow against the tree in the background. Just moving my camera a little to the right placed the bow against a clean sky. This guy has a nice separation on his left side, our right side, because of the shadowing from the main light and the column. Then I moved him back to get an accent light on the side of his face from the outside lighting. But I don't think it's quite as successful, because the background behind him, where that accent light is also a light tonal value. So in this case, I like the left one better.
In order to see the hair light that I added with my reflector, it needs to be set off against a dark background. But in this image, the highlight of the hair is placed against a light background, making it hard to see the effect. I moved the camera to my right so that the highlights in her hair would be in front of the dark door. Now this has more impact.
I think this girl tends to mush into the background because the color and the tones are similar. Try squinting your eyes to blur her out. So I moved my camera position and I increased the power on my lighting. Now she clearly stands out from the background. Remember, if we want separation, put lights against darks. The problem here is that her light face blends with the light sky and her dark top and hair blend into the dark background. So I got lower on the ground to position her light face against a darker part of the sky. And if you find this helpful, you can select the eyedropper in Photoshop and click on your image, and these circles will appear. The top inside color will be the current point, and the bottom will be the previous point that you clicked on. In this example, there's very little difference between the two. But this one shows a huge difference between the inner top and bottom values, and that's what we want. Her shadow side is getting completely lost into that dark panel background. I added a separation light on the wall, which in this case is an LED light, so I can see exactly what we'll be getting. We can also accent light her. But we don't want to overdo the background light as it is here. Remember, the attention should be on the person, not on the wall. There's plenty of separation here between her dark hair and the light background, so there's no need for a separation light. But here there's no separation of her black hair from the dark background. So I added a separation light behind her to create an outline of her hair.
Another way to separate a dark from a dark is to place something light in between them. Keep in mind that seeing a problem like this is not easy. Because our two eyes give us stereo vision, we can separate objects that are at different distances away. Plus, we can see into dark areas better than a camera's sensor can. So we need to look with an educated eye. I did that simply with her hand. I saw that there wasn't much separation of her hair to the dark piano, so I asked her to bring her hand up. Here's another example of a problem with separating the subject from the background. In this image, we have a bright, busy background that's making it hard to see the subject's face. Look how much better this is when we keep it simple and make sure that the face stands out. To do that, I moved the camera position to avoid that sunlit area in the background. While this isn't exactly about separating your subject from the background, this does have to do with excessive hot spots in the background. Often the camera angle will have a tremendous effect on the final outcome. Amateurs sometimes aren't very careful about what's behind their subject, but if we keep everything in the same key or tonality, the image will look more professional. Just imagine how this would have looked with the contrast of that bright building and the dark trees behind her. See, this is what I'm talking about. And this is why people will pay more for a professional portrait than snapshots like this.
We have separation from the background here, but sometimes we have the option for other separation opportunities.
By just moving him to a little different place, we picked up a strong accent light. To keep the separation aspect going, I moved my camera so the accent on his face would be positioned against the dark post behind him.